Right. New camera. I don't know whether you can tell. I can tell. um, yeah, this is kind of a follow on. The one about don't draw the eyes and the nose and the ears. I don't think people got that. The point of that, apart from the fact that the construction thing gets in the way and everything else, is that if you consider them a thing, then it's the thing that you consider, if you know what I mean. Because you will say it's a nose, and your brain then says, I know what noses look like, I'll give you a hand. And it helps you, and inadvertently doesn't help you, to draw noses. So suddenly you're drawing what you recall and not, what's in front of you. So this thing, and someone commented today about the knowledge thing, and needed to know the basics before they could make it more responsive. Well, that's completely wrong, because you respond to something in a certain way, and if that response is based on prior knowledge, think of it in real life. Without, I don't want to get into anything complicated, but let's say an individual that comes from a certain place, and your perception of that, the knowledge of that place, influences your response to that individual. That's the problem, right? So you already know this stuff, and it'll influence the way you respond. That's the problem. So if it's purely about drawing is not knowing, if you can get that, drawing is not knowing, drawing is trying to figure out, drawing is trying to understand. Think of a child who's trying to understand the world. That's what drawing is. It's not art. It's not art. It becomes art maybe later on, and somebody else might decide that. But in the first instance, it's just trying to figure stuff out, trying to understand something. So that's basically what the not drawing noses and eyes and elements of the face by name. That's what that's about. But the other thing as well is that you can make this hard by simply saying, I've got to be that good, or I've got to be this style, or I've got to be this standard. Those things, even if you're not conscious of them, they could influence your difficulty levels. Because even if it's just a case of, I've seen some great portraits and I'm going to draw in that manner, or I'm going to make a portrait, and somewhere in the back of your mind there's that vision of what that portrait is, then you're gonna make it difficult for yourself, because you're going to get to a place. It's an expectation. I mean, I talk about expectations all the time. Zero expectations is the only way to do this. So if you look at this, what this is response. It's just your response to all art. Is an artist's response to the world, or it's a imaginative response to the world, or response to or something. But it is a creative response. If it's skill based, if it's just production, that's a different thing. That's going to be illustrators, for instance. But the thing about the response thing is that if you look at other people's work and think how great it is, consider it as a response to something. It's not all art is a response. It's often just production. But there are some artists that are able to combine the two, to respond and to produce. But essentially it is all about response. So if you let that response influence every mark that you make, then every mark will contain your response, and that's the beauty of it. That's where ultimately your style will lie. So in terms of the other aspects of what people are talking about, the scribbling, for instance, the scribbling is just my way. I need to identify. Somebody said scribble, then scribble more, and then all of a sudden, which is, they never even watched the video clearly. But I need to find out where everything is. So I can choose to do the dots, to do one dot for his forehead, one dot for his bridge of his nose, one for the tip of his nose. I can do one from the forehead to the tip of his nose to his beard. But that's not scribbling. It's just I happen to scribble to find out where those things are. So it's a way of refining what I'm looking at on and improve my accuracy. The the scribble thing is one. It's kind of a trick. If you've done the scribble course, you know what I mean. It's a trick to confuse the brain into thinking that this is not really that important. You can just have fun. So you're allowed to scribble. You're allowed to doodle and scribble. There's no expected outcome from scribbling and doodling. So it's a great way to release yourself from the confines of having to do it a certain way. Let me just see. I will do this because, and people see this as the scribbling thing. Now I will do this because it's just me finding out where everything is. You can do it. You don't have to scribble. You can do it any way you like. But the problem is that people see this and think, well, it's not the way everybody else does it, and probably isn't the way. And there are some people that draw this loosely, but generally speaking, people want you to do. They want you to do this. They want you to do a fine line around everything. They want you to put a fine line around there like that, and they want to. And this is proper drawing. No, it's not. That's just hard work. And I've done all that, so I can tell you firsthand that it's just nonsense. So you want to follow that path, go down that road, you make it nice, even lines, and work out all the shapes and everything else. This just it's not necessary. Let yourself go. And then these people that do that, all these people that do all this precision stuff, one day they'll turn around and say, I'm trying to loosen my style. And they think it's just, I'm going to swap the brush that I use, or I'm going to change a different medium. They think that's what it is, because they're so embedded within the technique that they think technique is the reason why they can be looser or not. They'll stand up to paint, or they'll paint further away and think that's how they can improve the looseness of their style. Well, it's not. It's not any of those things. It's a mindset that changes that. But this thing of having a more freer idea of what's going to happen, and really the freedom is the not knowing thing. The freedom is not knowing and not caring, really. However this turns out, this will turn out the way that it will turn out, and it's not really. You see, the thing is that, and I'm scribbling now, and you can see me doing it. You can see the face start to evolve. The thing is that beneath all this, so when you see me scribble, beneath all this is my eyes are continually checking everything. Where everything should be, I am continually checking those things. So every mark that I make is a conscious mark in relation to something else. It may be local, it may be around. So if it was just the eye, and I don't really need to focus on that just yet, but if it was just the eye, and I was just looking at these elements within the eye, what I'm doing is I'm looking at the distances between things. I'm looking at the overall shape that's there. So it may appear like it's just a scribble, but it's my eyes that are actually, and if you can see my face, I'm looking at that every second. And it's that's guiding the scribble. It's a focused scribble. The reason why it's scribbly is simply because I like it to have life in the marks. And I said this a billion times. To have life in the drawing, the portrait, which is exactly what you want. You want a portrait full of life. There has to be life in the marks that you make. It's as simple as that. So this thing about, it's just scribbling and it appears, that's just, people don't understand. They don't get it. And if you're new to this is probably the best way to learn to draw. It's probably more akin to what you knew as a child, which is exactly where you want to be. You don't want to be an adult when you're drawing. You want to be a child, because a child sees and a child concentrates and a child is absorbed. So you don't want to be the adult that's distracted by lawnmowers and the washing machine breaking down or the car wanting fixing. You want to be a child, that carefree, no worries in the world kind of thing. So draw like a child is what Picasso said. Everybody thinks it's just that childlike drawing. What he meant was to be psychologically in the place of a child, in the mind of a child. That's what he meant. But as I say, it's probably the same people that say you must draw like this that don't get the Picasso reference. But yeah, it's not hard. This is the other thing as well. You tell yourself it's hard, it's going to be hard. It's like everything in life. How many times, if you're as old as me, right? How many times have you experienced something, thought, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought? You know, it's a truth. Things are never as bad as they seem. And if you've got this idea in your head that it's going to be really hard to make a portrait, everybody says that, don't they? They all say portrait's the hardest thing in the world to do. No, they're not. They are if you want to do it like somebody tells you it should be. But if you want to just make marks that resemble somebody or capture their essence or whatever it is, if you want to do that, that's not hard. These things are your marks. This is your expression. This is your response. So it's not hard. But as I said, if you tell yourself it is, it will be. That's a fact. But the charcoal, by the way, new batch of charcoal, new burn, and I've got loads of it, and it's all coming off like this. This is hazelwood, and it's cartridge paper. But the thing is about this, right? And when you buy charcoal, look out for this. It's got an even flow. I don't know why. And if I just suddenly, stutter or whatever, I don't get a dirty black mark, a real ingrained, like when I did that drawing the other day with the girl and the collar, and suddenly you got a dark mark. This doesn't do it. This just does not do that. It's very free flowing. And to be fair, my scribble depends on that free flowingness. I did a lesson with somebody on Sunday night, and I think one of the things that is critical, particularly when you want to do this sort of thing, is that you have to have flow in the marks, in the way you mark. What she was doing was this kind of thing, and this kind of thing, sort of doing like there was some kind of stuttery angular thing. What if you draw arm's length, arm's length away and from the shoulder, you get a better flow. And also, I mean, you've got to decide on doing that. I don't think it was in her. She's already an artist, and it's just not how she's used to working. So she wasn't able to, get the flow. So the marks became very jaggy and very. Now, talking about response, the marks that you make should be in response too. So if this was an angry, crusty old man that's just come up from the mines, then it might well be really, really stuff like. But that's a responsive thing. So the response is driving the way you make the marks. But this is not. This is a nice face, kind of soft and lots of humility in it and all that kind of thing. So the marks are going to be, I'm going to respond to that. And that's basically what the responsive approach does. It means that you're going to have a much more a technique, if you like, or an execution that's more in line with the emotion that you feel about the subject, which is exactly what a portrait should do. So it is an emotional response as much as anything, well, probably as much as a visual response. So you want it to reflect in the way that you draw something. So it's one of those things, and that requires no skill. I mean, that's just something that you've already got the skill to do. We can all respond to other humans, but you've got to be able to give into that, because you're up against this. You must draw it like this brigade, and that if you're coming to making portraits is the longest route you're going to take, and chances are you'll pack it in before you've got to a point where you've done anything decent. But if you take away that requirement and simply let yourself make something special, create something, then who knows what you could do. There's just so much potential, but it can be very hard when you're sort of faced with the definition of portraiture, and the definition of execution of portraiture. All these people that want to tell you it should be done this way. It can be very hard to get past that, especially if your motivations are based on somebody else's work. because that's a, you know, some of the, you see some portraits, you look on Instagram, they're just staggering. I mean, the quality of some of those portraits are amazing, but you're talking people that have been doing it for tens of years. You know, they're not people that have just sort of picked up a brush. They're and oh, it's all of a sudden they're making great portraits. None of them are. They're all people that have got lots, thousands of hours of practicing. And they may tell you, oh, you just follow this technique, or you do a circle and square and all that rubbish. And all of a sudden you've got a portrait. They may tell you that, but they've practiced. They've practiced that for hours and hours. And it's if you see that and that inspires you to make portraits, be careful, because it will be it'll either rule you, because you'll feel you have to be as good as that, or it'll stop you. You know, it's that thing about skills. You know, skills are at best the reason to do it, and at worst the reason not to. It's that kind of thing. So you'll either decide I haven't got the skills and therefore I won't do it, or you'll say I've got to learn the skills in order to do it. So both ways you kind of you sort of lose out, you know. But it's a confusing thing. I mean, I made the decision not to follow any kind of regime and just do it, regardless, because this is just for me. This is not for anybody else. This is my fun, and I've got the luxury of being able to do it all the time. And obviously, the people don't have time like I've got time to do it. But I think the secret is, and you can see me doing it. I mean, people might again think this is me just scribbling, but it's not. I'm drawing. I'm just happen to make marks. I happen to make the marks with more freedom, and I'm not afraid to make wrong marks, because that's another thing as well. Sort of, if you get into the, you know, you must draw it this way with precision sort of routine, you'd be afraid to make wrong marks. You'd be afraid to make mistakes. And that's the last thing you want, because half the time the mistakes are the best bit. It's just that somehow your creative juices take control, and a combination between your heart and your hand, and all of a sudden there are things happening that you just couldn't have considered happening, and it just transforms everything. When those things happen, chances are you're going to make a great portrait. When you're deliberating over something and determined to do something, chances are it's just going to be a portrait, or at best a good rendering, a nice copy of a face. But if you want it to be special, you gotta sort of let your soul take over. But it's not hard, as I said in the title. It's really not hard to do this. But as long as you don't listen to people that tell you it is, that's the problem. Because once you're there, it's not coming back. But in terms of the going back to the scribbling and the finding, the shapes and things, I do not think of the elements of the face as shapes. I just think of all these things, and as I said, all I'm doing all the time is checking distances. So I'm checking from the corner of his eye to where his sideburn starts there. That's what I'm doing all the time, and that's why you see me dashing around. I dart around the face because I'm constantly checking things. So it's important that I get that the hair that's there and the distance from there to the corner of his eye, as it is getting the alignment there, because I can see that if I take a horizontal there, I can see what the hair is there. So it's important that I do that all the time. So it appears, as I said, a scribble, but in fact it's fully controlled. It's controlled by my meticulous observation. That's what I'm doing. That's why it looks so. And the thing is that with the scribbling, all over scribbling approach, look how quickly it starts to look like the man. And that's the thing. I mean, I'm drawing all the face, and that's obviously going to have an impact on the resemblance appearing quickly. But nevertheless, it's also happening because of my overall, the full face approach. Because that's another thing. A lot of people will, but sort of one thing at a time. You'll see it all the time. When you're starting out on this, people will say, "Oh, I start with the eyes and work out from there." That's fine, but if you've got lots of paper, you know. And when I started, to be fair, when I started doing this, I didn't care if it ran off the paper. I just wanted to learn how to draw properly. So if it ran off the paper, if it touched the sides, didn't care. But now I draw the whole face. So I literally, you'll see when I start that I'll do you'll see my arm just sort of flows around because I'm making a visual imprint of where it's going to land on the paper. And from that, I then know exactly where everything's going to fall. So I'm doing the overall, I'm drawing the whole face, and it results in the face fitting where I want it to fit. So it's not really a sort of random placement thing. But as I said, drawing the whole face all at once tends to result in a much quicker appearance of the likeness. But it's imperative if you're doing now. As I say, this charcoal is magic stuff, and it's probably as much to the you know, the reason why it works as anything. Even though the other day I was doing, you know, the thing with the shop bought willow. It's different. It's a different feeling to this. So I would say get you know, numerous charcoals and try them all. Make sure they flow. Make sure they don't get in the way. The worst thing you want is a tool that gets in the way of your creativity, and something you've got to fight with to make it work. You know, you don't want that. If you want that, try painting in oils. The thing that is critical about all of this, apart from the marks being a responsive mark, is your observation. So if you've seen the dot thing, check your observation. Check how well you can see things, their position, their distances. Check all that, because that's the thing that makes all this work. You can make blocks. You can make simple marks, so long as you know that you're actually seeing where they land in relation to everything else. That's the important thing. And the beauty of having the good observation is that it'll also be used when you start fixing the tones. So when you start fixing the tones and the values and the relationships between all the tones and values, you'll be doing the same thing as you were when you're figuring out where everything is. It's all about observation. So, like I say, it's not hard to do this, only if you tell yourself it is. It really isn't. And a lot of that is down to what you perceive a portrait to be. So if you've done the first part of the zero course, you'll know what I'm saying when you need to understand that portraits can take many forms. And the thing is that I'm not saying you should adopt any of those styles that are in that course. What I'm saying is that those people found their own response to and their own creative response to making a portrait, and you need to find your creative response. It has to be unique to you, because that's the thing. I mean, we all respond to people in different ways. It can be down to many factors really, but it can also influence the way that what you choose to draw, what you choose to make portraits of. I mean, there are times when you've got commissions, I suppose, and you ain't got much choice, but you've still got the facility to adjust the way that someone is lit and the pose they've got and all the rest of it. So you can still affect the subject and respond accordingly, because lighting might be a way for you to suddenly think, oh yeah, there's a face there to draw. There's somebody on YouTube. He's a great portrait artist, and he's a proper fine art artist, and he talks about, even with a portrait there has to be something to draw. So he'll look at faces and decide on whether or not it's worth drawing, and even though he works on commissions, and he gets around the problem of sometimes, there isn't much to draw, by lighting it in a different way, or posing it in a different way, or dressing them in a different way. So there's all kinds of of things that will affect your response, and you're in full control of all those. So you don't have to. This is the problem when you're working with pictures that people send you. They send you those dodgy photos from the 1970s. Can you stick these two people together? That kind of portraiture is going to drive you around the bend. Honestly, you need a straitjacket after you finish doing one of those. But it's not. I always turn those sort of things down because it's not fair on me, because it'll just do me more harm than good. I don't really care whether or not I offend somebody or whatever. I'll just say no, I don't do them. I would do them if they let me sort of take the photograph and pose it and all the rest of it. But more often than not, they just said this person's no longer alive, and that's really kind of much about that, can you? So it's difficult. But as I said, your response to something, you're in full control of that. You don't have to respond in the same way to everything. You can just say, well, I'm excited by this, or I'm not excited by this, or whatever. Whatever the face speaks to you, that's what you're going to respond to. But anyway, what happens after this? Somebody asked me the other day about the finishing thing. As you can see, it starts to get more and more tighter as I'm beginning to sort of. I always think that as soon as I get to a point where I can feel the marks becoming more deliberate, I think that's when I'm drawing. Up until that point, I'm just investigating. I'm just exploring the face. But as soon as I start making deliberate marks, I always think I'm drawing. That's when I'm drawing. So up until that point, I can make mistakes. I can things can be wrong. There can be, I don't really care, and But as soon as it becomes deliberate, that's when I'm drawing. So yeah. But the next thing after this really is to fix the tones, to sort the eyes, and then it's just about done then. But as I said, don't make it hard. Don't fall into someone else's description of what portraiture is, or whatever standard they think you should be, or don't fall into all those sort of traps, because ultimately it's about you. It's your response to somebody's face, and that's all that matters. It may not look right, and things may not be in the right place. It's the reason why I talk about the dots and I talk about the scribble, because it couldn't be any simpler. If you can see things as simple dots and position things around simple dots, how simple is that? And then if you allow yourself to flow with the scribbling, or not, you don't have to scribble it. You can still make marks that flow that aren't scribbling. I'm not so sure that you want to be getting locked into the precision thing and drawing outlines around things and all that, because that's another one of those things that take a long time to learn. But if you just learn the basics, as I said, the observation thing, sort your observation out, and make sure that that's as good as it can be. Everything else will just fall in place, because you don't really want a technique that's going to get in the way of your response, because it's like that thing about, oh, this tool won't do that, so what I want it to do that because I feel that this way about the subject, so I want it to do that, but this tool won't do that. So what do? I go along with what the tool will allow me to do, and that's a bit like drawing with software. That's the problem you've got with software. Photoshop doesn't do that. Oh well, I want it to do that. No, but Photoshop doesn't do it. So I'm not a prisoner to anything. I'm not a prisoner to Photoshop or any kind of regime in terms of how I should do it. I just do it. Anything that gets in the way of that, I don't take any notice of. And that's really where I started. So, and when I started, just under 4 years ago, that is what accelerated my portraits. That's what changed everything. I just was doing them regardless of the outcome. I didn't care what people thought of them. It wasn't for anybody else but me. And I never drew the same thing twice, which is a big thing. This thing that people keep drawing faces over and over again until it's right. That's terrible. You don't grow that fast. You don't grow fast enough doing that way. You've got to move on, learn, move on. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to really, and you just get fed up. And that's another thing, you just you're gonna keep your momentum, and that by drawing different faces all the time and learning from one face to another, the way that you grow is exponential, and that again, it's common sense, But doing the same thing over and over again, no, it's just I'm going to draw eyes over and over again to learn to draw eyes. That's a nightmare. Why would you want to do that? Every face that I've drawn, the nose has been different. So why would I want to learn to draw a nose over and over again? As I said earlier, I don't really refer to the elements of the face, but why would I want to do that? Because every face I've drawn has been different. So it's irrelevant. And then people talk about the way that the nose is built and all the rest of it. I don't need to know that. I can see what's on that face. I can see the shapes and the shadows and the light highlights. I can see all that. Why do I need to know what makes all those things? Anyway, a bit of a rant, bit of a ramble, but yeah, the camera's all right. It looks pretty good from my end, anyway. And I can see what you can see on screen as well, so it looks pretty good. But I think lighting's the next thing. Oh, I've got a decent microphone as well, so maybe that's better as well. I've not really made any effort in this regard, because this is not about how well I filmed this. This is more about me sharing what I've experienced and what I know. So if it's not quite, if the sound's not quite crisp, or it sounds like I'm talking in a toilet, then I just didn't think it mattered. If it mattered, then you shouldn't be watching this video, because it's not about those things. But I thought I'd just splash out and get a camera. That's the thing. It's not 4K, but apparently they make a difference with YouTube. So we'll see. Put in the comments down below if the video is any better. I look at the videos that I filmed on the other one. They do look better on this. So in terms of lighting as well. So it's got to be some improvement in there. But now that I'm at this stage and you can see all the things, I mean, sometimes I leave them like this, but you can see all the things that won't fix it on it. I'm going to sort out the density of the eyes and the highlight that's there. I can't touch it because I've got grease on my fingers. And the problem is with charcoal is that as soon as you get the grease, it goes shiny like this, you force the grease into the paper. And when you come back to make marks, you can't, because it's got no bite. So the only thing I do with that is either a cotton bud. So when I want to do, say, the lid there, I'm going to put some highlight into there, I'll take it off with a cotton bud, or I'll take it off with this thing, sponge on a stick thing. So it just takes off enough of the surface, so I can start to, I can come back and put marks into it. And of course, then for the highlights, which is as I'm starting to figure out the eye, I can take out the necessary elements that I need to put in for the highlights. But hopefully, I've addressed a few of the questions in terms of the scribble and the don't draw the eyes and the nose, because I think, as I say, I think it got sort of misinterpreted by some, and I've helped you to sort of approach this in a much freer way, because that's it. There's got to be freedom in all this. There's got to be, it's got to be a pleasure and a joy and all those sort of things. Nothing good comes from struggle. It's all good comes from joy. So you got to do that. You've got to be, like I said on one of the earlier ones, you've got to be in a happy place to do this. So, and if there was trepidation in terms of the difficulty, then you're not in a happy place, are you? You're probably terrified of it's going to go all wrong. It's not going to work. It's not going to work, and that in itself is a problem if that's a consideration. Anyway, so as I said, I'm just going to fiddle with this, sort the tones out, even things out, maybe leave some of the roughness in there, but it looks like Abraham Lincoln, doesn't it? But that's it. That's it. If it's scribbling, it's focus scribbling, if anything else. But it's not really scribbling. What it is this continuous observation thing, and learn to do that, because that is the one thing that makes sketching a lot easier, or drawing a lot easier. Anything a lot easier if you're doing it from live. If you can observe with accuracy, that's the goal. Having a good eye, as people call it. but that's the goal. You've got to really focus on that. And then whether it's scribbling and mark making, or whether it's a big fat pencil, or even as we were playing with the other day, the big oil pastels that Basquiat used, those big like lipsticks. Even with those, you could still, if with the right observation, you could still draw effectively. But that's the thing. It's observation at the end of the day, regardless of your execution. Right, I love you and leave you. I'll finish this off. Stick it on the socials if the socials are working. Facebook's just gone down, so I have no idea what they're doing. I think somebody unplugged it, I think. But yeah, I'm just about there. You can see, it's evolving right now. So I can then calm down and sort out all the tones. So they say, I love you and leave you. And hopefully it's been a better experience because of the camera and the microphone.